I've been trying to find the words to articulate this experience that I want to talk about, but I feel like it is semi-difficult. I guess I wanted to talk about previously being an undiagnosed autistic person, experiencing autistic things when I didn't know that I was autistic, and how now with that information I have been able to completely, for the most part, shift that perspective, and things make a lot more sense. So, fun fact, I used to think that I was an asshole. I used to think that I was abusive because I experienced nonverbal episodes, or episodes in which I no longer had the ability to communicate verbally, where I would shut down, I could not speak. This is called an autistic shutdown, and for me personally, the more overwhelmed and stressed and stimulated I become, the more likely I am to shut down. And the first thing that goes is my ability to communicate, my ability to vocalize anything that I want to vocalize. And I experienced this a lot growing up, but I didn't know that I was autistic, and I didn't know what was happening. For example, I used to work my first job, I was a cashier at a grocery store. I never want to do that again. But I was a cashier, and I think many of us know how jobs like that go. You're standing there for 6, 7, 8 hours going, "Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?" over and over and over again. And sometimes people trauma dump and tell you their whole life story when you're just doing your job, you're just doing your job. But it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. It is repetitive in nature. It is exhausting. I hate social interaction with strangers. But there would come a point a lot of times during my shift where I would just stop talking. I was doing my job, right? Like I was beep, beep, beep. I was doing my job, but I would just stop talking, and the most I could muster up would just be like a fake half smile to the customer in front of me, or I would just not look at them at all. I would just keep doing what I'm doing, and most of the time they wouldn't talk back to me, because I guess most people probably wouldn't in that situation. It's not the most welcoming, but this would happen to me, and I would just think to myself, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with you? Like, you can't even do simple things. Why are you like this? You suck. You can't do a basic, simple job. Just talk to people. Just, like, what is wrong with you, right? I knew that something was happening to me, and I knew that I would arrive to this point where I could just simply no longer. It's like everything in here would just stop. I would just stop functioning, and all I could really focus on was the bare minimum of what I absolutely had to do in that moment in time. And during a shift at work, that was ringing up groceries, bitch. Like, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm here for. Talking to people is unfortunately a part of that. But, sorry, there's a cat. But yeah, I would get to this point where I was just done. Socially, I couldn't anymore. I wanted to run away. I wanted to leave. I want to go home. I could no longer speak, and my only explanation for that was, there's something wrong with you. You cannot do a basic task that is speaking to people and doing a basic ass minimum wage job, you suck, you're ridiculous, you're broken, you're flawed, you're done, you'll never amount to anything in life. Very harsh. It's so harsh. I noticed this in relationships too, in romantic relationships. The more potentially overwhelming or demanding social situations I would find myself in as I began to grow up, the more I would notice that sometimes I just hit this wall and there's nothing I can do about it, and I just have to wait until it's over. Thinking about relationships, for example, whenever emotions would be heavy, or maybe I was in a argument or just an emotionally demanding discussion that was lasting for a while, and maybe my day had been overwhelming prior to that, maybe not, but at these times where emotions were heightened for whatever reason, and I'm sitting here, I'm talking with this person, there would come a point where I would just stop. I would just stop talking. And in these situations, I had almost convinced myself that I was emotionally abusive, right? Because I would sit there and my brain, this is what's going on in my brain, I'm like, why aren't you talking? Why aren't you talking? Just say something, just say it. I think the most like torturous part of having an autistic shutdown, of going nonverbal and not knowing or not understanding that that's what is happening to you, is feeling the words literally rise up all the way through your throat and land all the way on the tip of your tongue, and just not being able to push them out, just not being able to get them out. I would feel the words in my throat, I would feel them on the tip of my tongue, and no matter how much I bullied myself or pushed myself, I literally physically could not speak. And experiencing that, but not knowing that that's what I was experiencing, was genuinely torturous. I thought that I was giving the silent treatment, and I would just think to myself, like, why are you like this? Like, why would you do that? Why don't you just speak? And I wanted to so badly. Especially when it gets to a point where someone is like, oh, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? Like, why won't you talk to me? And I still can't speak. And not knowing and not understanding why that was, a lot of times I would literally just physically isolate myself, get up and maybe go to another room and just sit there or cry or do whatever I needed to do until I felt like I could communicate and be seen again. And looking back on that now, knowing that I'm autistic, I just want to go hug her. I want to tell her that she was not a bad person, that she can do simple things, that she was definitely not abusive, and she was not giving the silent treatment, because that's not even something that I do. That's not something that I do. I was pulling out the only possible explanations that I could think of for what was happening to me, even though I didn't think that those were it. Because what else was I to think in those moments? I literally had no idea what was happening to me. But I feel for my past self, and it's really sad to think about, I guess, the kind of emotional turmoil that resulted from experiencing these things and not even knowing what they were. But now that I have that context, I don't have to ask questions. I don't have to belittle myself. I don't have to bully myself. I don't have to not understand what is wrong with me or what is going on with me, because there is nothing wrong with me. I am literally autistic, and I was probably just overwhelmed or overstimulated for so long that my big old beautiful brain decided that it's time to shut off the communication center so that it can keep everything else going, like the things that actually genuinely keep me alive, like my beating heart and my lungs allowing me to breathe, all of the things that truly matter, the things that I literally cannot live without. And sometimes communicating, sometimes speaking, talking or laughing or smiling or looking at someone is not one of those things. They are not things that literally keep my brain and my body alive and nourished. And sometimes I have to go without those things for a little bit in order to keep doing what I'm doing, and in order to come back from the stress that my nervous system was experiencing for a while. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, knowing that our big, beautiful, gorgeous, autistic brains literally say, I don't know if you know how overwhelmed you are, but I do. So I'm just gonna put a stop to this. I'm just gonna help you out for a minute. We're gonna turn off. We're gonna flip the switch. We are going to go inward. We are going to isolate. We are going to lay in our bed in a dark room with a blanket over our heads, and we're gonna shut out as much noise as we can, or do the closest thing that we can to getting away. And we're gonna recover, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna be our amazing selves again. It was so difficult and so scary, but not having the vocabulary, not having the words, not having the knowledge to name your experiences doesn't leave you with much. I didn't know what else to think. And so I just thought I was a trash human being who couldn't do anything, or I was an awful partner, or an awful friend, and I sucked at life. But that's not true at all. I've just been thinking a lot about autistic experiences that I have had throughout my life, and the impact of not knowing or understanding that they were autistic experiences, and I wasn't insane, I wasn't shitty or awful or incapable, I was autistic. And I have always been, and it would have been amazing to have that information. It would have been so helpful to know that, but I know it now. 20 years into my life. Anyways, I think that's all for this one. Thank you for watching this if you did, and I hope that everyone is going into the new year with a little bit of hope, a little bit of grace. I will see you next time I decide I have something to ramble about. Goodbye.